So we've arrived at Clontygora tomb, also known as the King's Ring, here in Newry, County Armagh, and it's a beautiful sunset. First time I've been to this place, and I must say it's very accessible, except for the parking, which you got to park about a mile up the road. But apart from that, it's very accessible. It's just off the main road, and it's a beautiful spot, surrounded by beautiful countryside and rolling hills. We've got a few farms nearby and a few indiscreet cottages. But apart from that, the whole countryside is absolutely stunning, and it's a beautiful March night. And it's actually quite warm as well. I'm starting to sweat a bit. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. It's a wonderful looking tomb. It was used as a community tomb for the local farming community 3,000 to 3,500 years ago. And I guess there are a lot of bodies buried here. Unfortunately, from what I read earlier, some of the tomb and the surrounding stones were removed back in the 18th century for the construction of the Newry Canal. So it's not completely intact, but it's a very striking. I'm not too sure if it's a wedge tomb or a portal tomb, but some of the local farmers who kind of tried to give me directions said it was a cairn. Well, it's not really quite a cairn. It was actually used for burial ceremonies, and it's beautiful to be here. Don't think I could have picked a better evening, to be honest. What time is it? It's just gone 5:30, so it's another 30 minutes or so to sunset. But it's a real beautiful place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bit of video footage of the tomb, and then I'm going to get some shots going with the Canon. Okay? So you can see we've got a really nice chamber. And from what I read, this is where a lot of the ceremonies took place as well. And it's in a wonderful location. There's your panorama, and we'll get some more of the tomb itself. It's quite nice with that sun coming down behind it. I'll just get down a bit. Get a bit closer. You have a couple of onlookers, Mr. and Mrs. Cow. Say hello, Mr. Cow. Say hello, Mrs. Cow. No? We've got some sheep in the background. So I'm just having to walk around to see what the best angle is for the photos. That's quite nice there, but what I ultimately want is the sun setting behind the stones. So the sun's off to the right here, but that is quite a nice spot. So yeah, what I love about spots like this is, although it's not as tranquil some places because we're very close to the main road and there's a lot of tractors and cars whizzing up and down. But normally the tranquility and the beauty of these spots, it's very, very cool. And it's the fact that these stones have been here for thousands and thousands of years. So much generations and history. And I'm sure these stones could tell a lot of stories. Way before Christianity. Whenever you had communities of farmers, well, you still do have communities of farmers. However, back then they didn't have tractors or, you know, expensive cottages. So this was what a lot of communities would have been built around, and I believe that there's a nearby river to the east. I don't know which way is east. Obviously these communities would have been built close to the main water supply, and that's how the communities grew. And most of these larger communities obviously had a ceremonial spot marked by these stone circles and stone tombs. It's very magical. There's not much of a breeze, and you wouldn't get any cloud movement or any soft cloud movement. So I skipped the tripod, so it's just handheld. So I'll be exposing for the sky. So at the moment the camera's set ISO 100 f14 1/60th of a second. So let me just take a lens cap. Just take a couple of test shots of the sky. Now, if anything, I want to underexpose, and then we can do all the processing in Lightroom. Really, really impressed at the clouds. Nice clouds can make or break any good landscape photograph, and we've got beautiful clouds this evening. So it's looking really good. Hopefully it'll transfer well whenever we get home and get on the computer. So let me just take a couple more test shots to see what we're like. I'm gonna, let me see. I think I'll bring the ISO up to 200. I still think that's dark. I'm going to drop it down to f11. Yeah, f11 at ISO 100. So how's that? Okay, you can see me, good. Sun's looking really nice. I'm going to get quite close here. Close and low is how I like it. Close and low. It's looking good. Sky's looking fantastic. Just want to see where that sunlight is. It's right behind that tomb. My knees are getting wet. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing the camera up just so you've got a bit of sunlight just refracting through, and hopefully that'll work. You don't want the sunlight too strong, you just want just a hint of that sunlight. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Can you still see me? Yep. I want to get right down. Can you hear that cow? He's not too happy. Hopefully I'm not sitting in any cow poop. Is that directed at me? Right, I'm just going to work around a little bit. He's probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about. I'm just going to get closer here. Okay, just looking at these. Do you know what? Sometimes it's really hard to tell. Sometimes it's all about experience and guesswork. Once again, I'm exposing for the sky more than the foreground, looking at my view screen. The foreground's very, very dark. So that's why I always shoot raw. It gives you so much flexibility, versatility whenever it comes to your post-processing. And this is a completely gorgeous sunset. So I'm just going to stop talking. I'm going to keep shooting, and I shall see you later. Okay guys, so here we are back in Lightroom, and we're going to process this image. I selected a bunch of images and chose this one. Quite liked how it balanced out. We've got enough information and detail going on in the foreground and with the background as well. I did really try to focus on exposing for the background more than anything else, just to make sure I wasn't losing any details with those clouds during the sunset. Okay, the image was shot with the 24 to 105mm at 24mm at ISO 200, f9 at 1/60th of a second. Okay, so let's get stuck straight into this. We're going to leave the exposure for now and contrast, and we're going to bring the highlights in the sky right down just to make those clouds really pop. And we're going to bring the shadows right up just to get all that information in the foreground. Bring it up 100% for now, and we can tweak it later. Now we'll set our white point, so finger on the Alt key and drag the slider right up until you can see some white coming through the mask. Somewhere about there looks nice. This sort of adds a nice balance to the contrast. The blacks, I think that I'm going to leave the black slider for now. I'm not too sure if I want too much black in this, but what we're going to do is we're going to pump up the clarity, which will really define all those midtones and all those details and bring out a lot of the information in the sky as well. So we can drag the clarity right up. Always like to bump the clarity in my landscapes up very high. We shall say about almost 100%. And we'll bring the vibrance up a little bit. And then we'll scroll down to the HSL bar. And we'll just concentrate on the luminosity. So what we want to do is we want to bring the blues in the sky right down, so which will bring up all those details in the clouds and the rays from the sun just popping through. Bring that down to about there. We don't want to bring it down too much or else it will become oversaturated and a bit mucky looking, so that looks fine. You know, we want to bump up the colors and make everything pop, but we want to sort of keep it pretty realistic looking as well. With the aqua, there's some aqua in those clouds, and we can bring the aqua either down or we can move it right up. I think we'll settle for about there, just to blend it in nicely with the darker blues. With the greens in the foreground, we'll make that grass just a little bit brighter. And with the yellows and the oranges, this will of course mostly affect the rays from the sun and the details in the clouds. So we can bring those right down. Looking nice, looking good. Sharpening, we'll bring the sharpening right up to about 70, 75. Normally I would add a bit of additional sharpening once I export the image, once I export the JPEG into Photoshop. I would, work on maybe some high pass filtering or something like that. We'll want to mask out some of the sky because obviously we don't need the sky sharpened. So finger on the Alt key. The white areas are the areas that are going to be affected by the sharpening, and the black areas will remain untouched. So we don't need too much sharpening in the sky at all. We can bring that mask right up so that the sharpening is just affecting the foreground, and that looks good. Now I do know, because we bumped up a lot of the shadows, even though it was only shot at ISO 200, we're going to get a certain amount of noise in the image. So for that reason we can use a noise reduction, and we'll bring it up to about 24, 25. And also we'll bring the color noise up a little bit, or the color noise reduction up a little bit. And we can zoom in once it's finished rendering. We can zoom in just to see how the noise is looking. That's not looking too bad. Zoom out. Okay, we're going to select Enable Profile Corrections, which will get rid of the lens vignette and also sort of stretch the image out nicely. So click on that, and definitely click on Remove Chromatic Aberration, because I noticed that there was some certainty around the edges of those rocks. That should help get rid of that. I'm going to add a little bit of a vignette, which should also make that sky pop just a little bit more. Not too much. And let's change it to color priority, which should really only affect the sky. And that's not too bad. In fact, we could maybe bring it down a little bit more. About there looks good. And then we're just going to, I don't know if you can see this because of the webcam here at the bottom, but in the camera calibration toolbar we have blue primary, and sometimes I like to just to bring up the saturation with the blue primary. Just gives the colors extra vibrance, and I've just tweaked it up just to +15. That looks fine. Okay, so let's go back. We're going to just bring down the exposure just a little bit. And we're going to bring up the contrast just a little bit. Not too much, because we don't want to lose too much information. And we'll maybe just bring down the shadows just a touch. So about there. What I want to do now is I want to crop the image. The foreground, I think there's just too much going on, and I think we can easily just get rid of some of that and just bring that up a little bit to about there. And double click. Okay, looks good. What next? Radial filter. I want to brighten up this area of grass in the foreground. So for that I'm going to use the radial filter, and I'm going to scroll across and draw an oval. We'll grab that, bring that across into the middle. And this should sort of draw the eyes more towards the foreground as well. We want to invert that mask. We're just going to brighten up just a little bit. We're also going to warm up that patch of grass. This thing's a bit too cool, so we'll add some warmth to it. It is a sunset after all. Something like that. We bring this down a bit. Okay. Yep. So far, I'm quite happy with this. We've got a bit of lens flare going on here, which I could maybe take out later in Photoshop. So what else can we do? We can maybe add a little bit more definition, bring up some details in these stones. So with the adjustment tool selected, and a little bit of exposure, we're just going to paint a little bit on these rocks. Something like that. Can maybe tweak the exposure just a little bit more. Excuse me. Something like that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that so far. I will export this into Photoshop and probably add some additional sharpening and maybe take out a few little bits and pieces. But yeah, I'm quite happy with that. That looks good. Let's have a look at the before and after. So we started off with the raw file, which looked like this. So it's before and after. This image will also be available to buy on Fine Art America. So have a look at my site on Fine Art America. There's other images that I have taken locally around Northern Ireland of similar megalithic sites such as this. And I'll be doing a lot more work like this over the coming months. So hope you enjoy it and enjoy your weekend. Make sure you subscribe. There should be a subscribe button. And have a great St. Patrick's weekend, guys. Thanks a lot, and slán